The power went out for good, then I watched them eat the old woman on my lawn. The last sound I ever expected to hear again was my dead wife's favorite song. It wasn't on a radio, of course. The radios have been silent for months. It was a low, guttural humming coming from just outside my window, a broken melody trying to claw its way through the growing dark. It's been over a day since I got bit. The wound on my arm is a weeping, angry mouth, but it doesn't look infected. Small victories, I guess. I've been rationing the whiskey, just enough to keep my hands from shaking so bad I can't hold my rifle. I promised myself, no more blackouts, not with whatever the fuck that thing was still shambling around out there. The clock on the oven read 7:32 p.m. when the first tremor of thunder shook the house. I had a frozen pizza cooking, my small reward for another day of not dying. On the television, some old black and white monster movie was playing from a DVD, a small comfort. Something from before. The sky to the east was the color of a fresh bruise. The storm was coming in fast. It made me think, with no weathermen left to scream about hook echoes and wall clouds, how would I even know when a twister was about to peel the roof off? I live in the dead center of Oklahoma. Tornadoes are practically a seasonal holiday. That's when I heard it. The humming. It was low, off-key, mangling the little tune Lyra used to hum when she was tending to her garden. My blood went cold. I killed the TV with the remote, the sudden silence in the room deafening. My rifle, a Winchester that was my father's, was already in my hands. I felt its familiar weight, the cold steel a comfort against my trembling palms. I crept to the window, my heart a frantic bird beating against my ribs, and parted the curtains a millimeter. The wind was whipping the branches of the old pecan tree in the front yard, making them dance like skeletal arms. Nothing else. I held my breath, listening, but the humming had stopped. Paranoia, I told myself. The silence is getting to you. You're hearing ghosts. I let the curtain fall and moved to the back of the house, my stocking feet silent on the hardwood. I checked the back window, scanning the tree line that bordered the property. Nothing but shadows. A flash of lightning bleached the world white for a second, so bright it hurt my eyes. The thunderclap that followed was instantaneous and violent, a physical blow that rattled the windows in their frames. And in that same instant, everything went dark. The oven clock, the lamp, the last vestiges of the world that was. All gone. Well, shit. The words were a ghost of a breath in the oppressive blackness. I knew this was coming. The grid was a corpse still twitching, but it was bound to go still eventually. Still, I wasn't ready. The freezer full of venison, thawing. The electric oven, now a useless metal box with my half-cooked pizza trapped inside. I found a candle and lit it. The flickering flame threw dancing, monstrous shadows on the walls. I sat there in the gloom, gnawing on a slice of lukewarm, doughy pizza, and tried to figure out what the hell I was going to do now. I could raid the stores for canned goods, sure, but winter was coming. Without heat, I'd freeze to death long before I starved. A generator. I'd go to the hardware store in the morning, get a generator and some fuel. My eyes drifted to the back window again, and that's when I saw them. Two small, pale circles, glowing faintly in the dark. They hung in the black square of the window, reflecting the candlelight. My chewing slowed, then stopped. They looked like, fuck, I was on my feet, the pizza forgotten on the floor. My rifle was back in my hands. They were eyes. Something was out there, looking in. The eyes vanished the moment I moved, but I wasn't letting it go this time. I fumbled in a drawer for my mag light and a roll of duct tape. My hands were shaking again, but I managed to tape the flashlight tight against the rifle's barrel. A poor man's tactical light. I thumbed the safety off, the metallic click echoing in the silent house. I took a deep breath, unlocked the back door, and pulled it open just enough to shine the beam into the yard. Nothing. The wind and the first fat drops of rain were the only sounds. I stepped out onto the porch, the rifle tight against my shoulder, sweeping the beam of light from the fence to the tree line and back again. Thunder rumbled again, closer this time. As I stood there, searching for the thing that looked like a man, I noticed a smell. Coppery. Like an old penny held under your nose. It was getting stronger with the rain. I held out my hand, palm up. The raindrops were cold, but something else was mixed in with them. I brought my hand closer to my face, into the halo of my flashlight beam. Several of the drops were not clear. They were thick, viscous, and dark red. Blood. It was raining blood. A twig snapped in the darkness just ahead of me. I jerked the rifle up, the beam cutting through the thickening crimson shower. The light didn't quite reach the woods, but it illuminated what was standing at the edge. Eyes. Not two, but dozens of them. Pairs of pale, shining orbs, all fixed on me from the gloom. My heart hammered against my spine. I started backing away, step by agonizing step, towards the safety of the house. A frantic scrabbling sound from above. I looked up. Crawling down the shingles of my roof, her floral nightgown plastered to her emaciated frame by the bloody rain, was Mrs. Gable from 2 doors down. Her face, coated in a glistening red sheen, was twisted into a mask of pure, predatory hatred. There was no time to think, no time to feel anything. I raised the rifle and fired. The shot was deafening. The bullet tore a hole in her chest, but she didn't stop. She launched herself from the edge of the roof right at me. Her body slammed into me, all bony angles and surprising strength, and we went down hard on the porch. The rifle flew from my hands. As I struggled to push her off me, I heard a chorus of wet clicks and snarls from the woods. They were coming. Adrenaline, pure and hot, flooded my veins. With a desperate heave, I threw her limp body off me, scrambled for my rifle, and dove back through the door, slamming it shut behind me. I fumbled with the deadbolt, sliding it home just as the first body slammed against the door. Then another, and another. They pounded and clawed at the wood, their howls and chittering calls filling the air. I braced my shoulder against the door, a scream tearing out of my throat, raw and useless against their animal rage. For a long time, the door shuddered and groaned, but it held. Eventually, the pounding subsided. I crept to the window by the door and peeked through the blinds. There were at least a dozen of them milling around in my backyard. Men, women, old, young. Apart from the feral, hungry light in their eyes and the way they sometimes dropped to all fours to sniff at the ground, they just looked like people. No children, thank God. I don't think I could have pulled the trigger on a child. They were gathering now, circling the spot where Mrs. Gable lay. I felt a sick knot form in my stomach as I saw her stir, a feeble, twitching movement. She was still alive. For a moment, I thought they were going to help her, to drag their wounded comrade back into the trees. I was so fucking wrong. I watched, paralyzed with horror, as they fell upon her. They didn't wait for her to die. They tore at her with teeth and nails, and I slumped to the floor, my back against the shuddering door, as her agonized wails began. I squeezed my eyes shut, but I couldn't block out the sounds. The wet tearing, the snapping of bones, and her screaming. The thunder boomed again, almost loud enough to drown out the feasting. Almost. Eventually, the screaming stopped. Sometime after that, numb with shock and exhaustion, I passed out. The sound of shattering glass ripped me from a shallow, nightmare-filled sleep. My eyes shot open. I was in the back room, still slumped against the door. The candle in the living room was guttering, casting long, wavering shadows. The rain had stopped. The feasting was over. For a moment, there was only silence. Then I heard it. A soft, wet footstep on the hardwood. A quiet drip, 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 drip. I pushed myself to my feet, my muscles screaming in protest, and crept to the doorway. Peeking around the frame, I saw him. The tall one. The one who bit me, still in his torn, gray suit. He was drenched in the blood rain, a fresh gash across his forehead where my skillet had connected. He was standing in the living room, mesmerized by the candle flame. He hadn't seen me. My heart was a frantic drum solo in my ears. I raised the Winchester, the sights finding the space right between his eyes. I squeezed the trigger. Click. The sound was louder than any gunshot, a hollow, metallic, useless click. My blood turned to ice. In my panic after shooting Mrs. Gable, I had forgotten to work the lever. I hadn't ejected the spent cartridge and chambered a new round. My eyes snapped back up. He was gone. The space where he stood was empty. Had he heard it? Had he seen me? Had he heard it? Had he seen me? My breath hitched. I wanted to rack the lever, to chamber around, but the sound would give me away for sure. I was frozen, trapped by my own fear. Then I heard another sound, a low sniffing from the hallway. There was another one inside. As quietly as I could, I dropped to the floor and slid under the bed, pulling the dusty comforter down to hide myself. I could hear them getting closer. The soft, wet footsteps, the snuffling, grunting sounds. I watched from the shadows under the bed as the man in gray crawled into the room on all fours, his head low, sniffing the floor right where I had been sleeping. He was tracking me. He sniffed his way across the floor, closer and closer to the bed. I held the useless rifle to my chest, my knuckles white, praying for a miracle. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from the living room. The man in gray stopped, his head snapping up. He let out a low grunt and crawled quickly back out of the room. I let out a shaky breath, my lungs burning. The candle light from the other room was getting brighter, flickering wildly. I heard panicked grunts and huffs, then the sound of more glass breaking. Then silence. I crawled out from under the bed and stared in disbelief at the living room. Flames were licking up the side of the sofa, spreading across the old shag rug Lyra had loved so much. It was going up like it was soaked in gasoline. No, 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 I whispered, running into the room and stomping uselessly at the fire. But it was too late. The flames were already climbing the curtains. A snarl from behind me. The man in gray was outside the now broken front window. This time, I didn't forget. I worked the lever, the shuck-clack of a fresh round chambering the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. I fired, but the bastard was fast. He was already leaping through the shattered window as my shot went wide. I cycled the action again, but he was a blur of motion, a predator in his element. I backed away, trying to keep the growing fire between us. We circled each other for a moment, a grim dance in a burning room. Then he launched himself over the flames. I dove sideways as he landed, his claws scrabbling for purchase on the hardwood floor. He skidded past me and into the back bedroom. Without thinking, I slammed the bedroom door shut, trapping him inside. I looked around at my house. My home. The flames were eating the walls now. It was lost. All of it. I had to get out. I snatched my truck keys from the hook by the door and ran. No others were in sight, but I could hear their chittering calls getting closer. I threw myself into my old Ford, cranked the engine, and peeled out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, the home Lyra and I had built together was an inferno, a funeral pyre painting the night sky orange. My only comfort was the thought that maybe, just maybe, the man in gray was burning with it. A few miles down the road, I had to pull over. My hands were shaking too violently to hold the wheel. I was gasping for air, choking on sobs. It was all gone. Everything. The photos. Lyra's clothes still hanging in the closet, the 1,000 little things that held the shape of our life together. All of it was just ash now. God, I needed a drink. I looked at the Winchester lying on the passenger seat. Or maybe just a shot, I croaked, a bitter, humorless laugh catching in my throat. I looked at the rifle again. Its dark promise felt so heavy in the truck, as heavy as the lingering coppery stench on my clothes. What was I even fighting for? To die alone from sickness or starvation? Or to be torn apart and eaten by those things? I had 3 rounds left, nowhere near enough, or 2 more than I needed. After a long time, I got out of the truck. My hands trembled as I picked up the rifle. I knelt on the dark, blood-slicked pavement and pressed the cold steel barrel under my chin. I angled it just right. I didn't want to mess this up. My thumb found the safety and flicked it off. My finger rested on the trigger. One gentle squeeze. That's all it would take. One tiny movement, and the noise would stop. The fear, the loneliness, the memories. All of it gone. I could do it. I gritted my teeth. Why couldn't I do it? It would be so easy. I collapsed back against the side of the truck, the rifle clattering onto the asphalt. I just sat there and cried for, I don't know how long. I had chosen life, for whatever that was worth. With a groan, I pushed myself to my feet, picked up my rifle, and climbed back into the cab. I pulled my phone from my pocket. The screen was cracked, but it still lit up. The background was a picture of Lyra, smiling on our last anniversary. For some reason, looking at her face in the dark, I smiled back. My choice was made, for now. I started the truck and set off down the dark highway, leaving the glow of my burning past behind me. I had to find a new place to be haunted.